Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Edge Academy, where we make economics simple and fun. Today, we are diving into a full new chapter that is utility analysis, one of the most important concepts in economics, in microeconomics. So, we will cover everything you need to know: the Cardinal Utility Approach, how economists measure satisfaction in numbers, total and marginal utility, what they are, how they relate, and why they matter. The next is the relationship between total utility and marginal utility, understanding how consuming more affects satisfaction. The ordinal utility approach, how modern economists rank preferences instead of measuring them in numbers. Key formulas and explanation with diagrams and examples to make it clear. By the end of this video, you will understand utility like a pro and be able to apply these concepts to real life choices, market behavior, and decision making. So, if you are ready to simplify microeconomics and boost your understanding, stay tuned and let's get started. So, before we start this topic, utility, you should know the concept of indifference curve. If you have not learned it yet, you can watch the full video in the microeconomics playlist on my channel, TH Academy. I have also added the link of indifference curve in my description, so you can easily check it out from there. So let's start with the meaning of utility. Okay, here. So, utility simply means the ability of a good or service to satisfy human wants. In other words, it's how much satisfaction or happiness you get from consuming something. Now, what is utility analysis? Every day, consumers make choices about what to buy, but we all have limited income. So, the goal is simple: to get the maximum satisfaction from the goods and services we purchase. Since resources are limited and human wants are unlimited, so consumers follow certain principles to make the best choice. So utility analysis helps us understand how people decide what to buy and how they try to get the most satisfaction from their money. So now let's talk about the two main approaches economists use to study how consumers make decisions. The first is the Cardinal Utility Approach. This approach assumes that we can actually measure satisfaction in numbers. Imagine if eating one chocolate gives you 10 units of happiness and a second chocolate gives you 8 units. That's the kind of idea cardinal utilities use. And the second one is the ordinal utility approach. Unlike the first one, here we don't measure satisfaction with numbers. Instead, we rank our preference. For an example, you might prefer tea over coffee or chocolate over chips. So it's all about which option is better, not by how much. So together, these two approaches help economists understand how people choose between different goods and services. Let's dive deeper into the cardinal utility approach. People buy and use different goods and services because they want to maximize their satisfaction. But how do we know how much satisfaction a product gives? This is where cardinal utility comes in. It tries to measure satisfaction in numbers. So we can compare different goods. Here are a few important points to remember. Utility differs from person to person. What makes you happy might not make someone else happy. So it varies by place and time. For an example, a cold drink gives more satisfaction on a hot day than on a cold day. So in simple words, utility is the want satisfying power of a product. So the cardinal utility approach uses this idea of utility to figure out how much satisfaction a consumer gets from a certain commodity. Now let's talk about total utility or TU. So, total utility is all over satisfaction you get from consuming all units of a particular goods or service. For example, if you eat 3 slices of pizza, the total satisfaction from all 3 slices together is your total utility. We can calculate it using a simple formula, that is Tu equals to U1 plus U2 plus U3 plus UN, where TUN is the total utility from consuming N units. And here you can see the U1, U2, U3, which are basically the satisfaction you get from each individual unit. And here N is the number of units you consume. So in short, total utility adds up the satisfaction from each unit to show the overall happiness from consuming a product. Next is marginal utility or MU. So marginal utility is the extra satisfaction you get from consuming one more unit of a product. For example, if you eat 1 slice of pizza, it gives you some happiness, right? But eating a second slice gives you additional satisfaction. So that's your marginal utility. We can calculate it using this formula, that is MUN equals to TUN minus TUN minus 1, where MUN is the marginal utility of the nth unit and TUN is the total utility from consuming n units. Here TUN minus 1 is the total utility of consuming n minus 1 units. So in simple terms, marginal utility tells us how much extra happiness one more unit brings. Let's take an example with a commodity. Let's call it commodity X to understand total utility and marginal utility. When you consume, look at the table, okay? So when you consume the first unit, your total utility is 50. Since you started from 0, the marginal utility is also 50. With the second unit, TU rises to 90. The extra satisfaction or the marginal utility, that is 90 minus 50, is 40. The third unit increases TU to 120, giving marginal utility, that is 120 minus 90 equals to 30. At the fourth unit, TU stays at 120. So marginal utility is equals to 0. So this is the point where you are fully satisfied. Eating more does not give extra happiness. So the fifth unit actually reduces TU to 100. So marginal utility becomes 100 minus 120, that is negative 20. So this shows that too much consumption can lead to discomfort or dissatisfaction. So how do we find marginal utility from TU column? Look at the TU value, the total utility value for each unit. Subtract the total utility of the previous unit from the total utility of the current unit. If total utility increases, MU or marginal utility is positive. But if total utility stays the same, marginal utility equals to 0. If total utility decreases, marginal utility is negative. So in short, marginal utility measures the extra satisfaction gained or lost by consuming one more unit. And we can easily find it by subtracting the previous total utility value from the current one. This helps us see how satisfaction changes as we consume more and why there is a point of maximum happiness. On this slide, we are looking at a graph of total utility and marginal utility for commodity X, both drawn from the same table values. At the first unit, TU equals to 50 and MU equals to 50. This tells us that the first unit gives the most satisfaction, so TU starts rising quickly. At the second unit, TU rises to 90, but marginal utility drops to 40. This means that the second unit adds the less extra satisfaction than the first. So in other words, as you consume more, total satisfaction keeps increasing, but the additional satisfaction from each new unit starts to fall. This is exactly what the total utility and marginal utility curves show on the graph. Total utility going up and marginal utility gradually going down. Now let's look at what happens at the fourth unit of commodity X. Total utility reaches to 120, which is the maximum satisfaction the consumer can get. Marginal utility becomes zero, meaning the fourth unit adds no extra satisfaction. So this point is called point of satiety. It's the moment when the consumer is fully satisfied. So eating more beyond this point won't make them any happier, in fact. So it could reduce satisfaction, as we will see in the next slide. So now let's see what happens at the fifth unit of commodity. Total utility drops to 100, which means overall satisfaction decreases, but marginal utility becomes negative 20 in this case. So this shows that consuming beyond the point of satiety reduces satisfaction. So the consumer actually experiences disutility or unhappiness from the extra unit. In simple terms, too much of a good can make you worse off instead of happier. So this is why there is an optimal amount to consume, the point of satiety we saw at the fourth unit. Let's summarize what the total and marginal utility graph shows us. TU rises as long as MU is positive. That's why both curves go upward in the beginning. But TU reaches at the maximum point when MU becomes zero. So this is the critical point, also called the point of satiety. After this point, TU starts to decrease and MU becomes negative. On the graph, you can see TU bending downward and MU falling below the x-axis. In short, the graph clearly shows how total satisfaction increases with consumption initially. The point where satisfaction is maximized, what happens if you consume too much, leading to disutility. Now let's look at the example using burgers to understand TU and MU. When you eat the first burger, your total satisfaction is A. So the marginal utility, that is basically the extra satisfaction from the first burger, is also A. Eating the second burger increases, like TU increases to 14. So MU is equals to 14 minus 8, that is 6. So the third burger raises to TU to 18, giving marginal utility 18 minus 14 equals to 4. Similarly, for fourth burger increases TU to 20. So MU equals to 20 minus 18 equals to 2. The fifth burger doesn't increase TU, it stays at 20. So MU equals to 0. This shows the consumer gains no extra satisfaction from the fifth burger. So in short, marginal utility is found by subtracting the previous total utility from the current total utility. It tells us how much extra happiness each additional unit gives. So this example clearly shows us TU increases and MU decreases as you consume more, which is a key concept in understanding consumer behavior. On this slide, we are looking at the TU and MU curves for burgers. So the TU curve is drawn on the top and shows the total satisfaction from consuming burgers, and the MU curve is drawn below and shows the extra satisfaction from each additional burger. Here's what the curves tell us. TU rises as long as MU is positive. You get more total happiness as you eat more burgers. TU increases up to fourth burger. That is TU equals to 20 at the fourth burger. MU becomes 0 at the fifth burger, meaning the extra satisfaction from that burger is gone. So this point is called the point of satiety, where TU is at its maximum and the consumer is fully satisfied. So if the consumption goes beyond this point, TU starts falling and MU becomes negative, showing that eating too much can reduce overall satisfaction. So the graph clearly shows us satisfaction changes from consumption and why there is an optimal amount to consume for maximum happiness. Now let's talk about the limitations of utility analysis. First, it assumes that total utility can be measured in numbers like 1, 2, 3, which is not really possible in real life. So satisfaction can't be measured precisely because happiness is personal and different for everyone. So people often consume goods together, like having tea with biscuits, which makes it hard to calculate exactly how much utility each item gives. So because of these reasons, the cardinal utility approach has limited use in explaining how consumers actually behave. So in short, while it's helpful for understanding the idea of satisfaction, it can't perfectly measure happiness in real life. Now let's talk about the ordinal utility approach. Unlike the cardinal utility approach, here utility cannot be measured with numbers. Instead, goods are ranked based on their preferences, like high or low. So this is the approach modern economists prefer because it's more realistic. For example, think about tea and coffee. If you prefer tea over coffee, tea is ranked higher. So if you prefer coffee over tea, coffee is ranked higher. So if you like both equally, that's called indifference. So you get the same satisfaction from either. In short, the ordinal utility approach focuses on ranking preferences rather than measuring exact happiness. So which makes it easier to understand real world choice. Now to wrap up, let's look at the oh sorry, key takeaways from utility analysis. It's the slip of my tongue. So we learned about total utility and marginal utility and how they show the satisfaction a consumer gets from goods. So we saw the difference between cardinal and ordinal utility approach. One measures utility in numbers, the other ranks preferences. So understanding utility is important because it helps explain consumer choices, market behavior, and how to make smart decisions with limited resources. So, in short, utility concepts are fundamental in economics and are useful for both the students and professionals to understand how people make choices. So, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, TH Academy. Your one click truly means a lot and helps support the channel. So, we have already uploaded lectures on microeconomics, macroeconomics, statistics, mathematics, public finance, and business studies. If there is any topic you would like us to explain, let us know in the comment section. We are happy to make it for you. So by supporting the channel, you help us continue creating high quality educational content for students all over the world. So this is it for today. We stop here. Take care of yourself. See you in the next video. Bye bye.